Americans are eager for alternatives to hostile, woke companies. At New Founding, we want to help. What does it take to grow an exceptional, pro-American business, and how can we start more of them? Welcome to Align, where you can find out. Our host, Bart Lamont, will be your guide. From his Indiana family farm to Air Force veteran, Shark Tank entrepreneur to president of Principal Investments, Bart is your premier guide to buying pro-American.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Align Podcast. Our guest today is Brandon Bates of Rural Cloth, a premium clothing brand built for those proud to be rural. You can see their products yourself at ruralcloth.com. Hello, Brandon. How are things in Utah today?
Good, man. They're better here than they probably are in the southern middle part of the United States. When your guys' high temperature day is going to probably hit around 102, 103. We're going to peak out around 83 degrees up here at 7,000 feet.
Well, thanks for the reminder. I think yesterday we hit 107. I was seeing several car thermometers, and they've been sitting in the sun. One, my cousin actually sent out a photo. It was 115, and it's just said, thank you, Texas.
Oof, yeah, there's a lot of things I love about Texas. If I had to, that's probably the only thing about Texas that I don't love, but all the other great stuff about it makes up. So,
yeah, I think all of our new neighbors who moved in over the last couple of years are getting their first real dose of a Texas summer. So
specifically
welcome.
the ones from Santa Barbara.
That's right. Yeah. So hey, we love having you, but this is the cost of it, right? The cost of freedom.
Right.
But so Brandon, tell us a little bit about Rural Cloth. Tell us who is Brandon Bates and how'd you get here today?
Man, I'm not a great third person kind of guy, but I can tell you about Rural Cloth. Rural Cloth was kind of this thought process that I had for a really long time. I was the announcer for the professional bull riders for almost 20 years. So I went to the big PBR events, the largest events in Western sports. They hired me when I'll go back a step further to tie this together. I was a high school rodeo athlete. I rode bareback horses and bucking bulls and things like that. I realized at a pretty young age that I didn't want to make a career out of it, but I really loved it. And then when I say didn't want to make a career, I didn't want to make a career as a competitor because I was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted
a hard lesson learned, right?
Hard lesson learned. But I wanted to stay involved, and I wanted to be a part. I just love the rodeo life. I loved everything about it. And I started announcing like high school basketball games and play day rodeo events and like the smallest junior rodeo things ever. And then it just kind of snowballed into, well, we want you to come do this rodeo. And it was a little bit bigger, and then it was a little bit bigger. And then the next thing you know, it was really big. And by the time I'm in my very early 20s, 21, 22, I'm announcing these PBR events and a host of pro rodeos as well. And then the PBR called and said, hey, we want you to come do all of our events. I was 22 years old, going to make six figures. Like it was literally like I won the lottery, right? So I was there for like 20 years. To rewind that just a little bit, I did not think that I would have that job until I was probably 45. My brain, I thought, if I work really hard and I am half as good as I think I am, by the time I'm 40, maybe they'll let me announce, a big, huge PBR event somewhere. Well, I somehow managed to bypass that by 20 years. And it wasn't because of my talent. It was because the talent pool is just not that big, right? There's not a lot of guys jumping out of college to be like, hey, I want to be a rodeo announcer. That's the real case. But it was a great career path for me. It was I had a very deep history in Western sports. So let's fast forward to Rural Cloth. There's really three big brands in the Western lifestyle. There's Cinch, Ariat, and Wrangler. There's a couple others that are going to argue about that, but let them argue. And those three brands are really endemic to Western sports or Western lifestyle. And they're cowboy boots, cowboy hat. I've had the opportunity to hang out with you a couple times at a couple of different PBR events, and like that's not you, right? Like you are you might want to wear cowboy boots and you might want to wear Wrangler jeans, but your sport coat, button-up collar, you have great hair. I don't. Like, there's just things about you that are not, what I mean? You're not a, what I mean? You're not a cowboy hat to Western shirt, Western jeans, Western boots. Like that's and my point is that's not 95% of America. Like they love the lifestyle, but they're like, I don't want to be full cowboy. Like I just want to like kind of be cowboy. I want to be rural. So I felt like there was a gap in between. I thought there needed to be a really cool brand and really fun brand and something that was cool that wasn't just about rodeo. In fact, it was probably 1% rodeo and 99% rural lifestyle. So I'm like, what's out there for a rural lifestyle? Like people, Wrangler does great stuff, right? But I think when you really get down to the gist of it, they sell most of their jeans in Walmart, and that's
Right.
not really who that rural consumer
That's
is.
not your market.
That's
Yeah.
not our market. Like, and I buy stuff at Walmart all the time. I'm not saying I'm too good to shop at Walmart. That's not the point. The point is, I've got a lot of customers that are in that country music, SEC, Southeastern Conference, Texas, Big 12, whatever, right? I've got a lot of those type college kids that they're like, look, I grew up on my grandfather's farm. I've got rural roots. I live in the city now, but I still want to connect to that lifestyle because being a rural American still means something to a majority of us. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where I felt like the gap was. Like, how do we create a
Yeah.
product that speaks to that person and says, hey, look, being rural is not hokey and corny and whatever. Like you can still. So anyway, Rural Cloth was
Yeah.
born out of that thought process.
Excellent. Well, I want to get back to the market side and country music and all that in a little bit, but I just want to kind of go back through so you're from Oklahoma originally.
Originally from Baton Rouge, and I transplanted to Oklahoma in my early high
Okay.
school years. Yeah.
And that's where you got into rodeo?
I got into rodeo in Louisiana. When I lived in southern Louisiana, that's where I kind of got my first taste of it. And then it was so much of an appetite for me that I convinced my parents. I have a great family. It's going to sound like I have this crazy dysfunctional family, but I don't. I promise. We're all super close. The taste and the appetite was so strong for me that I convinced my parents in between my sophomore and junior year of high school. I said, hey, please let me go live with my grandparents to finish out high school so I can high school rodeo in Oklahoma, where the best athletes are for high school rodeo at that age. Somehow they said yes. Like my daughter, in fact, today is my oldest daughter's 15th birthday, and if she walks in my office right now and asks me to go live with with our grandparents, I'm gonna like lose my mind. So, like I can't, I mean, and I love my grandparents, but I'm just like, you're not leaving. What are you talking about? You're 15. Um, but it's funny. Like and it really didn't hit me until even just now. I've told that story a million times. But when you hear somebody that has success in something, whether it's a country music singer, whether it's this crazy entrepreneur, you hear these stories of Mark Cuban, love him or hate him, sleeping on the floor, eating ramen noodles before he started, the .com thing that he sold for 100 plus million.
Broadcast.
Yeah, broadcast.com. Like there's always a catalyst, right? There's always a trigger, something that you can tie it back to and say that person was willing to sacrifice everything at a moment to get somewhere else. And maybe that was for me. Maybe it happened when I was 15, when I was like, you know what? I don't necessarily care that much about my high school friends and prom and, all that stuff. Like this is the choice I'm going to make right now. And I did it. So.
Yeah. So rural cloth literally was not your first rodeo. I'm
No.
sure you've heard that a time or two, right? But so fun to see. It kind of the path isn't always linear either, right? And so 17 years, right? I mean, your dream to become a professional bull rider. We always say that the good Lord has other plans you might not realize at the time they're occurring, right?
Right.
But eventually, bull riding got you into PBR 17 years, right? And so anyone listening or watching that thinks Brandon might sound familiar, chances are, I'm sure you traveled the country, international. I mean, how many events do you do in 17 years?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, and really with these 17, 18 years, at the highest level, and then, another couple of years getting there. I mean, 40 a year, globally, Australia, Mexico, Canada,
Right.
even went to Brazil, do 30 of them in the United States, from Madison Square Garden to the Staples Center, AT&T Stadium, just every massive event. So yeah, if you're a fan of PBR, there's a pretty good chance that you've heard me, do some level of commentary somewhere.
So it was during that time, right, that you're traveling around, seeing rodeo fans wearing these other brands, I think we've talked in the past, right? When we've had some conversations, you said, people who have enough disposable income to come out to a rodeo, you don't wear Patagonia to a rodeo, right? Let's help the listeners. If you're listening or watching here today and you've never been to a rodeo, what should I wear?
Yeah, well, so the funny thing is what you should wear. I always tell people exactly what you have on right now. No issue with that whatsoever. It's not a
It's a welcoming sport.
yeah, exactly. Very welcoming sport. So I don't ever tell anybody like, hey, you should try to be. The worst thing I think you can do is be like, try to become something you're not, right? Like all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm going to go to the rodeo, and you like put your cowboy hat on backwards and the boots that you haven't worn for 12 years and the belt that's out of style from 15 years ago. Like that's way more insulting to a very Western endemic rodeo person than it is if you just came dressed like you just got off of work at the bank, right? But going down the path that you're going, you're right. Like I was going to Madison Square Garden, Staples Center, Cowboy Stadium, blah, 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 blah. I can name 15 other buildings around the country. And I'm looking at all these people, and they're consuming a very right-leaning, conservative sport, which is Western lifestyle. Rodeo it's exactly that. But they're wearing these extremely left-leaning brands, and what that tells me is like they like the fit and feel of Patagonia, they like the fit and feel of Columbia, they like all these brands because they do make cool stuff, right? Like I mean, I'm not
Absolutely.
they make great,
It's high quality.
yeah, they make high quality products, but from the social sentiment, they're very very out there, right? And I know that consumer isn't there consuming bull riding. The person there buying a ticket consuming bull riding isn't a hardcore liberal. They're just not. Very, very small percentage. And I'm thinking, there's not a like, what do they have? Because if the only option they have is to go Wrangler Central area. Nothing wrong with those brands, but then they feel like they got to go whole get up. How do you just wear a cool T-shirt that says Old School Country or America We Grow Beer or Farmers Feed America or something cool like that in that space without having to go like, full cowboy when that's not who you are either? So that was kind of the whole process of me going, okay, there's something here. Like, what is it? And yeah, that's how I started the company.
So you leave PBR, you've got this idea for Rural Cloth. What was the product that really took you to the next level, or where did you feel this isn't just an idea, this is a real business?
Still, I don't know if I'm there yet. But it was an idea, but you got to remember, like, I'm a complete idiot, right? Like, I was an announcer. Like, I didn't know anything about the apparel space. I don't know anything about making product. If we could go down that story about how I even got to the point, it's a little bit longer story than we have time for. But long story short, I sent a random email to a clothing manufacturer based in the United States, and they passed that off to someone. And that person kind of laughed at it and called me anyway, almost by accident, and said, hey, I got this weird email that you want to start this clothing company for farmers, or like, do you want to make overalls? Like, what do you want to do? And that conversation led. So basically what I'm getting you to is like that was literally Jesus saying, all right, you're just like, I know you're not smart. Let me help you here. That's kind of what happened. So anyway, so we got into kind of headwear space and stuff like that, and this happened. I'm wearing this design. It's the gray one with the red, white, and blue patch. It's called America We Grow Beer. This is another rendition of it. Our designer came up with this thing called America We Grow Beer and designed it. And the first time I saw it, like, when you hear a song on the radio that you're like, okay, that's going number one. Like, you just know. And like when I saw this design, I was like, oh my gosh. I instantly got fearful because I knew how overpowering this brand would become to the actual brand. And I could not have been more right. So Rural Cloth with an idea and a thing, and we're going to make rural consumer, like we're going to not make, we're going to give rural consumers something and they're going to fall in love with it. Like, that was one box that like Fantasyland I was living in. And the other box in Fantasyland was like, people just wanted something cool. And so, this America We Grow Beer, which was just this like celebrate flyover states, like, right. We're growing wheat in Kansas and, Missouri, whatever, and hops in Oregon. Didn't matter. Oregon's not a flyover state, but you know what I mean? And this America We Grow Beer just transcended everything and literally launched us like, just like a rocket ship.
Well, speaking of number one songs on the radio, I see on your website that you are the official, unofficial sponsor of country music. That's quite a tagline.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of fun, right? So, like, I'm a big country music fan, and I think probably 95% of our consumers are country music fans. And Easton Corbin, who's had a couple of number one hits and a couple of top
Yeah.
fives, he's a minority partner in this company. I had a great relationship with him for a long time. We were old hunting buddies from a long time ago. He's a FFA kid out of Florida that turned into country music star, and he just was really endemic to us. And so we have a pretty deep root in the country music scene, and so I thought, how can we become the official sponsor of country music? Like, who makes that claim? And our marketing team was like, well, nobody makes that claim because it's not a thing. And I'm like, well, let's make it. Like, what? So we just got to settle on this. We're the official / unofficial brand of country music. So anyway,
I love it. You got to have a bold vision, stake the claim.
right, yeah.
So that same customer that's out there listening to country music, enjoying a rural lifestyle, in today's world, they are buying products online. Obviously we can, go to ruralcloth.com, see the clothing yourself. You can buy that hat, shirts like that. But, you also have a strong presence in traditional retail. How do you think about, and, where do our consumer, where does our audience, find your product?
So we have kind of settled really strongly into a farm and fleet space right now. So, if you're in the Midwest, Atwoods is a great place. If you're in the Northwest, Murdoch's and Coastal Farm Supply, those guys up in Oregon and in that area, D&D Supply in Idaho, and through that Cow Ranch in that kind of Utah I-15 up and down corridor. I'm leaving out so many of them. They're going I just hope they don't hear me and get mad at me. We're in about 800 farm and fleet stores right now, and then probably another,
Okay.
I don't know, 100 or so kind of mom and pop stores. Oh my gosh, so we're in the Buckle. I mean, I know that's not a traditional farm and fleet space at all, but that just shows you how deep the roots are moving into the rural lifestyle. We sell a ton of hats in the Buckle stores across the country. So probably 1,000 doors total when I really think about it and kind of where we are right now. We still haven't broken through. I mean, we're still not in Boot Barn. We're not in Cavender's. We're not in Tractor Supply. We're not in Menards. And these are all just growth things for us, right? Like, we probably could make a big push and be like, okay, like, make us a sweetheart deal. Let's make you a sweetheart deal. Let's go, 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 go. But we could talk about growth capital and different things later, and what companies really need to survive, and how growth can actually kill them faster than they can realize if they don't know what they're doing. But for the moment, farm and fleet, online, D2C, we're kind of trying to toe that line as evenly as we can.
Right. And I know you have some strong opinions on the D2C side, about the real winners and direct to consumer. So to any other entrepreneur out there trying to, really hone in on that marketing mix, what kind of advice would you give to another e-commerce entrepreneur out there?
Be very flexible. Do not fall into a singular mindset of this is the way it's going to be, because I promise your business will reach around and slap you so hard you have no idea what's coming next. So you have to be able to flow. What I always say, don't fight the river. If the river's pushing you one way, like, you got to go with the flow. You cannot fight it, the other way. If everything in gravity's pushing you one way, you don't want to go the other direction. I do have strong opinions about the direct consumer side, because I had that singular vision I'm warning you against now, where I was like, look, we're going to be a direct consumer. Our margins are going to be very high. We're going to make all this money, and this is going to be great. People are going to love this brand. Let me tell you who makes money in the direct consumer game right now. And they've got you brainwashed that they're the ones that they can make you rich, but you're making them rich. And that's Apple, that's Google, that's Facebook, that's, obviously Instagram and Facebook are the same one. They're the ones getting rich off the D2C game right now. You're not getting rich. If you really run your numbers and you really dive into it, I'm not saying that there's not a couple of products out there that can't be moonshots and do well. And online retail is a very, very real thing. But retail is a very, very real thing. And, those farm and fleet stores, I don't want to regret saying this, but they're somewhat recession proof right? Like people are still in there shopping because they have animals to feed, they have gardens to take care of, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about the Great Depression or 2008. Those farmers never stopped, and those people that live a real rural lifestyle, they never stop. So think about those people, because when shit hits the fan, they're the ones that are going to bail you out of it.
That's right. No, we the country needs to remember where our food comes from, far too often. But I do think we've seen a great resurgence in appreciation for rural lifestyles, for agriculture, and speaking of food, tell me a little bit more about the American Cattle Company and that brand that you guys are working on. I've seen the hat there, and what does that future look like?
That goes back to the question that you just lent me a moment ago, about being an entrepreneur and like how do you overcome hurdles, and that singular mindset. Like, so remember, let's go back real quick. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start this brand that's gonna rival, not rival, but that's going to kind of say, okay, you're wearing Patagonia, but you really want something rural, and I'm going to call that brand Rural Cloth. We're going to be direct to consumer. And then now I've shifted it turned into America We Grow Beer, that's still owned by Rural Cloth, and we still have Rural Cloth branding, but customers want what customers want. So we've expanded on our America We Grow Beer, turned into America We Grow Whiskey, Farmers Feed America, like all these kind of fun designs, right, that are parented by Rural Cloth. So I've had to, maneuver my way through that a little bit. And then in the process of designing things, we came across American Cattle Company. And American Cattle Company was a design, and I thought, oh my gosh, I love it. It's incredible. But there's zero chance that we're ever going to get that. So, let me do a trademark search before we even go down this path even farther. It wasn't taken. It was available. And I called my trademark attorney immediately. And I was like, get me this trademark in the apparel space. And he's like, I don't think you can get it. He's like, even though he's like, it's just pretty generic. And I don't know. He's like, it's going to be hard. So we filed, we got it. And now I think that you're going to see Rural Cloth will become this whole Americana, like America We Grow Beer, America We Grow Whiskey, Farmers Feed America. And then over here, Rural Cloth will own American Cattle Company, which I'll try to, this is a very similar hat to what I'm wearing right now, but, and then here's another American Cattle Company design, right? So,
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got, and then this was the first American Cattle Company design, but you can see how fast, American Cattle Company, turns into like 26 different designs that all say the same thing. It becomes, to me, a very, very real brand. I see American Cattle Company going to, hopefully one day, food products, kitchen utensils, steak knives, a series of grills that are American Cattle Company grill line that are licensed through, somebody like Pit Boss or something like that. I just think from a branding standpoint, it has crazy, crazy legs. We've already filed for the trademark in the whiskey space. I think I'm not a big drinker, but I think American Cattle Company in the whiskey, in the whiskey space really speaks to that, that consumer as well. It's just really fun. And, I've said Jesus once, I'll say it again. I think, American Cattle Company is kind of another Jesus moment for us where, either lucky or God, one of the two. So,
So really, Rural Cloth can kind of become the mothership with some of these other individual brands kind of spinning off of there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. And I, look, I don't, that's the other thing I'll tell other entrepreneurs, and you've been an entrepreneur your whole life too. Like, like you can get a mindset and you can tell yourself, we're going to do X, and if the customer tells you that you're going to do something else, well, you can figure out which one's going to work out faster, and the answer to that question. Like, you have to listen and go with the way your customers want to go. So I'm happy with Rural Cloth becoming a parent company of a couple of other things here and then a couple of other things over here, and just I would be nothing but happy if Rural Cloth turned into this almost media conglomerate where one part of it is television and podcasts and apparel. And as long as we're pushing forward the rural lifestyle agenda, and we're, moving that forward, and we're doing good things with profits and stuff of that nature, that's kind of really all I care about.
So in that vein of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, obviously, you talked a little bit earlier about you don't know what you don't know, and being foolish enough to proceed forward with a business, with just an idea, right? I mean, there's one school of thought out there that says ignorance is bliss, right? And whether you're too naive to not know what you don't know, or so maybe perhaps overconfident to just proceed forward because you're so passionate about an idea. All of those challenges any entrepreneur out there has dealt with, has faced head on, and has overcome. Right? I mean, they know to celebrate the wins, but also power through the losses. Right? What if you were to look back through some of Rural Cloth's history, and even obviously a lot of your work with PBR was somewhat entrepreneurial as you kind of created your own brand and that side. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs to power through the challenges they face?
Ignorance is bliss, and that's what I said a minute ago. I said it's either lucky or God, and I really don't care what you believe. Like, there is a God out there, and He does move things in the way that you don't always get a say in. So you could. One of my favorite sayings is one from the scariest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. But not to get sidetracked, but I love to tell people this all the time. Just because you don't believe in the devil doesn't mean he doesn't exist. And kind of the same thing with God, right? Like, just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean he's not real. So ignorance is bliss. I think that's God's way of protecting us from times and being like, look, I'm not going to show you everything, because if I did, I know what's going to happen to you. You're going to run as fast as you can, the other way. And, I think, you sometimes just have to power through, and sometimes you do have to be lucky. And what I mean by lucky is, sometimes you got to have, a higher power pushing a different path. And I truly believe that for me. Look, if I go back through it, I look at my years at PBR, God just kind of let me coast and coast and coast. And I feel like He let me spend 20 years of building relationships. And that's what I did. And then at the time that it was right, He said, all right, I'm tired of you just coasting, and now I want you to take some risk. And if you're going to do anything that's ever, maybe not change the world. I've seen people use that. They really overuse that. I don't know that my goal is to change the world, but I think my end goal is to change as many lives as I possibly can and try to do really, really good things, because that's ultimately what I want, right? Like, a lot of entrepreneurs are like, I want to build a company and I want to sell it for $100 million. Well, I can tell you that if I do build a company and sell it for $100 million, I'll probably give 99.9 of it away. Just because that's what I want to do. Like, my end goal is not to be a successful business owner. My end goal is to be a successful philanthropist. That's really what I care about. Mm-hmm. When I'm old enough, I just feel like I'm being used as this instrument right now to try and do some fun things, to support my family, to put my girls through college, pay for weddings, live in a nice house, and then one day hopefully have an absolute crap ton of money that I can, give away to people wherever they need it.
Yeah. Well, that's, I subscribe to the school of thought that, wealth only magnifies the person you are, right? If you're a scumbag worth a couple $100,000 and you hit the lottery overnight, you're still a scumbag, right? Right. You're a $100 million scumbag versus a $100,000 scumbag, right? But if you're a good person worth pennies and build a business over the course of a couple decades, you're still a good person, and you've helped a lot of people along the way. And I believe very, very firmly that is our calling.
Yeah, that I don't know that I was always one of those people that kind of took that whole eye of the needle conversation with the camel deal probably a little bit more literal than what it really means if you're a seasoned theologist. But it always kind of stuck with me. So.
Well, no, and it all goes back down to, right? I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I think so many great entrepreneurs out there believe in that school of thought, and run their businesses and families and affect their communities in that same regard. So March of 2020, the world we're living in today was shaped by a new pandemic, and the world changed significantly. And I've talked to a lot of founders out there that talk about the struggles of their business, but was actually quite surprised to hear from you. You actually credit COVID with saving your business? I think it's a fascinating story, back to entrepreneurship and that, and would invite you to share us a little bit. I mean, how does COVID save a business?
Well, it is a very interesting story, and one that I think I shared with you earlier. I even feel a little bit guilty saying it that way, and because you just see so many businesses and like restaurants and retail shops, and so many things like shutting down, and people are like, I'm not coming back from this, and they just go on to do something else. But for us, it saved our business in the sense of so we are on this upward trajectory, right? Like we think we're doing okay. Feel like we're starting to make some traction in the direct consumer. We really at that time have no retail presence. This is early 2020. I had just hired a chief operating officer. I had just hired a director of sales, and we are getting ready to hit the ground running. It's January 2020, and we're going through our spring catalog of fall product, and we're having sampled, and we're behind the eight ball because we're a young company. So probably come, April 1, we've got to press the button on about $500,000 worth of outerwear. These are jackets and long sleeve shirts and things like this. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is our runway. We're going to take the company now. We're getting out of the hats, getting out of the t-shirts. We're going to become a real company. Like, let's go. And it was about $500,000 gamble, and it was truly a gamble because we had enough money to place the order. We had enough money to put down probably the 30%, and then we needed to float the company on sales to get us to the end delivery date. COVID obviously hits, rumblings start in February. It really happened early March. And I had this business mentor, really good friend of mine. Remember, I had just hired these people like January, February, and I had this really business mentor of mine that came in and I had him. I'm like, hey, what's going to happen here? And he's like, we have no idea what's going to happen here. He's like, this could be 1918, and this could be, the start of World War II. Like and what I mean, I'm just saying in a historical sense of like, we have no idea what's coming down the pipe.
Yep. The magnitude
of how big this is really going to be. And I remember listening to Dr. Burks on TV. I don't even know how I remember her name because she started telling the truth and they got rid of her pretty fast. But I remember listening to Dr. Burks on TV, and I remember her saying, she was like, this will be the thing that your generation will remember forever. And I went, oh crap, like this is sketchy. And because I don't like women in that position is something about women and females. Like they don't typically over sensationalize things, right? Like they usually are just kind of like to the point, very like in they don't get all weird and dramatic like men. I know that everybody thinks I'd probably say something opposite, but usually like when a woman in power speaks at that level and makes a profound statement, I'm like, okay, you better pay attention. Anyway. So this happens, and I remember that statement, and I remember COVID early on, and I'm on the phone with this business mentor, and I'm like, what are we going to do? And he's like, you have one thing in mind. You have to survive and advance. And I'm like, what does that even mean? He's like, I need you to get skinny, and I need you to get skinny right now. Like, you don't have 30 days. You have 30 minutes. And I remember, like, I'm like, he's like, you got to call your COO. You can either cut his salary in half, you can cut it deeper than that, or you can let him go altogether. And your sales guy, it's not even a question. He just has to go. And he's like, I know these are hard things to do. I know that this affects people, but your business those people will never be able to come back to you. You'll never be able to use them in the future. You'll never be able to hire if you don't make these hard decisions right now because your business is over. And you can't press the button on this $500,000 worth of product that you've been working 6 months on and designing. I mean, literally, dude, like it is, I know everybody uses this one all the time, but it's the thing where it's like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And this was like Mike Tyson walking in my office and just square punching me as hard as he could in the face. And I've got to readjust and go like, how do I get back from this? So like I had to pick up the phone, had to call my COO and have a tough conversation with him. We were luckily super great friends for a very long time. So he trusted me. He knew that I was, and he knew he was looking at the numbers thing. He was like, I'm just so glad you finally said it. He's like, because I can see it as well. Like we got to do this.
Yep.
sales guy conversation went fine. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't bad either. It was okay. And we canceled the order on a $500,000 worth of product, and we basically started over from scratch. And we're like, what do we got in the bank? What do we got in inventory? What's our best selling products? And how do we move forward from here? And those were our America We Grow Beer hats, like our very, just kind of cool T-shirts that people wanted to wear. Had a good relationship with a friend of mine in Dallas. His name's Jeff Rash. He's the chief operating officer at Mid States, which is a buying group. They run about 700 stores in the farm and fleet space. And I said, hey, I want to, try to maybe move our headwear in the farm and fleet. He said, perfect. Come to our first show in August. We went to our first show in August. I think we probably booked over $500,000 worth of sales in our first show in August, just in the hat and T-shirt space, nothing more. And it was at that moment that I was like, all right, I'm not cramming jackets and vests and outerwear that they can get from 15,000 other companies. What do they want? They want our designs. They want America We Grow Beer. They want this fun stuff. And then it became about headwear and volume and T-shirts. And I don't know. I look at some other successful brands out there, like Hui is a very successful brand in the Western lifestyle sports space. I don't know what their value is, 50 million, 100 million, 150 million. They're everywhere, right? And their primary model is headwear. They've had a great success run in the headwear space, and I'm happy giving our customers what we want. But to answer your question, not to ramble, is that goes back to the thing about being fluid, right? An entrepreneur, that sometimes you got to make hard decisions. And I'm going to tell you something: you will not start a successful business without having some really crappy days and having to make some hard decisions. But you got to make them.
Well, I think it's a tough lesson anyone's had to go through, in a leadership position, right? I mean, you had to get skinny, right? Constraints naturally mandate or force you to make hard decisions and ultimately focus, right? And so having to make those decisions on not your timeline, right? I think in a lot of times in business, we've talked about a lot of times you might have 30 days to make a decision. And in times like that, you've got 30 minutes or a couple days to really pull the trigger and lean up your business. And so, kudos to you for making those hard decisions, getting it to where it is today. Before we wrap up, I want to kind of take a step back and look at the larger kind of macro forces kind of shaping culture and society today, right? We've talked on this show before about BY and AY. That's before Yellowstone and after Yellowstone. Yellowstone, 1883. Major forces driving the Western lifestyle and America's love affair with rural life and the Western world. But also, I mean, you're still involved with PBR, right? And PBR is actually growing, quite, impressively. Can you tell us a little bit about PBR and just how you see America in 2022, almost returning somewhat to our roots as an agrarian culture and this desire to be outdoors and in free nature?
Yeah, I am still involved with PBR, but whether I really want to be or not is a completely different side conversation. I want to be in the sense where I like staying tied to the Western lifestyle. I do believe that even my involvement now, PBR moved to this teams concept and I'm currently the general manager of one of the PBR teams, and it's kind of a fun project for me. I knew a lot of the athletes, understood the business structure, so I said, yeah, I can lend you some time here. But truthfully, it's really a distraction from my primary business, and I don't know how long I'll be able to live in that space. But because obviously I've stepped away from PBR for a reason, and now I'm still, somewhat kind of like fringe tied to it, even though I'm not getting on an airplane and being gone every single weekend. But to go back, before Yellowstone, after Yellowstone, I think Taylor Sheridan is going to be a force. Like we will go down as Taylor Sheridan, who's obviously the creator and executive producer of Yellowstone and about 1883 and this whole crazy stuff. I think that Taylor will be inducted into every national Western Hall of Fame museum that exists for maybe saving American Western lifestyle culture and the cowboy itself, because he's done more for it in the past 5 years than I think any sports organization, political figure, advocacy group, maybe even FFA. I mean, I'm not saying anything about Future Farmers of America or 4-H, right?
Yep. No.
But to bring it to
Absolutely.
the mainstream and say like, I need you to pay attention here and understand like this romance of Western lifestyle. Like Taylor Sheridan is, gosh darn hero, as far as I'm concerned. Um, so, but yeah, I agree. I think you are seeing America turn over, and I think I don't know. I think we had this. Like, everything does this, right? Like, I know everything's up and down. It's got this flow. But we had this weird thing in the '60s. I always try to look at what's going on right now, and I'm trying to think, okay, how did my grandparents feel when they were my age in the '60s? Were they
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, the world is ending, and you believe they just passed Roe v. Wade? I know that happened in the '70s, but all these things that would have made my grandparents just explode on the inside, and they experienced it. The past 15 years have been that for us, right? They've been like, and I say us because like I'm a conservative. Like, look, I don't agree with every Republican out there by any means, but I'm definitely a conservative. um, and and I'm looking and living in this space right now where I'm thinking, hopefully this is my 15 years and I'm coming out of it, because I feel like we calmed down when we got to the 80s, right? Like we had this stretch from like
Mhm.
80 to 1995 where it's like, let's bring some decency back into, the world, and let's, come together. And when Bill Clinton won the White House, I don't remember burning anything. You know what I mean? I didn't think I burnt wood in my house. Like, I didn't care. I was like, whatever, it didn't matter. It wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, obviously because we didn't know what we don't know. But long story long story short, I'm just trying to think of. But now we've gotten to this era of extreme politics, and we've gotten to this era of extreme everything. And I just want us to turn back to our roots. I want us to get back to, you know, there's this thing in the Bible that it's very real. Like, woe be to those who call evil good and good evil, and that's what we see right now. And if I had anything that's really scary, that's what's probably the most scary to me is that we have people that are looking at good things and they're calling them evil, and we have people that are looking at evil things and they're calling them good, and that's a very, very scary place for us to be societally, or as a society. And I do think, however, though, we're starting to stand up and push back a little bit on that and be like, no, we're not doing this. So,
Well, and that's the whole point of this show, right? To give business owners, founders, like you, the opportunity to, number one, tell us about rural cloth, right? But most importantly, get down, boil down below the surface and know, what does Brandon Bates believe, right? What motivates Brandon Bates? What actually inspired this company? And so, back to PBR, and I think I want to give a plug for it, right? Ironically, you and I first met, at a PBR event at Cowboy Stadium here a
yep.
couple of years ago, and I think it's very refreshing if anyone watching has not been to a PBR event. It's one of the few events out there today where you still can take your children and actually come home with good, wholesome, fun, patriotic entertainment. Not only do they stand for the flag, they actually still say a prayer before the event. They bless the riders, they bless the bulls. It's very refreshing. I remember the first time I took a group of business colleagues to an event, everyone looked around and thought, wow, where are we? This is 2022 in Dallas, Texas. It's
Yeah.
very refreshing.
No, I mean that, I mean, kudos to the leadership and the, the chief operating officer over there at PBR. He always said, we won't start one of these events without a prayer. And when we do, I won't work here anymore. So he's been really, held fast to that. And, I always, I said the prayer for 18 years at PBR. And it was always, very, respectful and non-denominational. I always felt like I made it, like I didn't have
Right.
to cram the "in Jesus name" down everybody's throat, even though that's what I believe. There's a lot of people that buy tickets there that may be Muslim, or they may be
Yep.
this, or they may be that. But they have this, relationship with, with a greater being. And they, respect that, and so the prayer, which I try to make it very inclusive to them. And I know that, being a conservative and inclusive is probably a weird thing right now, but I still don't believe that it is, so it was important to me in how we said the prayer and structured it. And but yeah, you're right. We do it at every single PBR event that we're at. It'll always be that way. I think as long as our current leadership is in town and stand for the flag, we're very patriotic and very very Americana.
Well, I hope PBR can maintain it. Like I said, it's one of the few leagues left that I'm happy and proud to take my children to. Hopefully it can stand. NASCAR used to be still in that camp, and it's slowly shifted. And people, again, back to your roots, right?
Yeah.
Where did you start? What got you there? Who were the fans that brought you there? That's business in general, right? And when you change your views just to market to a new group of consumers, you alienate your base that got you to where you are today. And so it's very important.
Crazy to me. Your NASCAR is probably the craziest of all the ones. And I've got some really good friends over there. Austin Dillon and I, we're very, very close. He drives the 3 car, and I was friends with a lot of the drivers for a really long time, and there's just some things over there that blow my mind that those guys have, not those guys, but leadership has been changing. It's just crazy.
So for the final segment, Brandon, we always break out the crystal ball and talk about what's next, right? And so put on your thinking cap, put on your future goggles here, and tell me, where is Rural Cloth in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, 5 to 10 years. Sold in 10 years, I would say. I say that I think I'll still have some level of ownership, right? Probably over the next 5 years, kind of looking through that structure and thinking, I think Rural Cloth is going to be, probably in the shadows, kind of parent company to what will eventually become American Cattle Company. And I think American Cattle Company will go, look, I think we've got a brand opportunity here that, could be worth, millions upon millions. And that's not all going to go into my pocket. In 10 years, I want to be involved in the business from a board seat standpoint, probably have a minority stake in it, have sold a very significant portion of it, and then do good things with that money, whether it be to help other businesses get off the ground or invest in people from an angel investor standpoint, help, I don't want to say cure world hunger, but yeah, there's I've got a guy, I was looking at it this morning, there's a guy named Jared Smith. He runs this company called Advocates for Africa. And I've been wanting to, I remember I was probably, I don't know, it's been 15 years ago. I just felt compelled to help him one time financially with Advocates for Africa. And I didn't have very much money at the time. And I remember sending I don't know, maybe $1,000 or something to his cause. But this is a guy, him and his wife, they've dedicated their entire life to missions in Africa and giving people clean water. I know him very well as part of the Assembly of God Ministries for a long time, and what they've done. Any of you listeners really should look him up, and if you can help him, please do. He's one of the very core people like that I want to sell my company to help people like that who dedicated their life to a life of service to help other people, whether they're in Thailand or they're in Africa or they're in China, doesn't matter. People are people, and people need help, and people need philanthropy, and people need kindness, and people need that. And that's really kind of where I want to go with, if we sell the company for $100 million, then like I said, I want to give 99 of it away. That's where I hope we're at in 10 years. Well,
I'm confident you'll be there, Brandon. And I know I speak on behalf of the entire Align community and from our newsletter and all the different shows here. When I say thank you for building a great brand that represents, traditional American values and helps us remember our roots, remember where we came from. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, man.
I know you'll get there. I look forward to seeing your growth, getting a couple products in the door here, and as a final plug, visit ruralcloth.com. Go out. Anything else you want to say, Brandon?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I did actually create a code. I created the Align code. The code is Align. So if you go check out, it's 15% off. Anybody listening to this can go use it. It's Align. You just have to type it in the promo code when you get ready to check out. And if you have any issues, you can email me directly because I still like to get those sometimes. It's just Brandon@ruralcloth.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that as well. Brandon, we really appreciate you. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Bart.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Align. As Americans, we want to buy from companies that make our country stronger. Subscribe to this podcast and share so we can grow our network of businesses and consumers who share patriotic values.